Okay, so there's a YouTuber I like who goes by Trixy the Golden Witch, and back in December, I impulsively decided to reach out to her to see if she'd want to have a conversation with me that we could post to the internet somehow, and she said yes, and we had a really fun conversation, and she agreed to leave me in charge of editing it and deciding what to do with it, and I thought, I'll have that done in like 3 days, and I have spent the last like 2 months waffling because I was gonna post some of this publicly and try to put other parts behind a paywall on Patreon, but the back end of Patreon has been confusing me, and there's parts of this that I really like, and I definitely want to post somewhere, and there's other parts that are boring as dirt, and I definitely need to cut, and I cannot, for the fucking life of me, decide which parts are which, and the longer I think about it, the more I think everything I've ever said is stupid, and I should never post anything to the internet ever again. But I have to post this, A, because it's really cool, and B, because Trixie agreed to have this conversation with me and let me edit it, on the pretense that I would be giving her the publicity of posting this conversation somewhere, presumably in a reasonably prompt manner, so it wouldn't be fair to her for me to continue just sitting on this the way I have been, and holy fuck, when did it become February? Okay, forget about Patreon. I just need to post this somehow. Here's the cool part.
The stereotype that everyone's a single issue voter is very real. You know, I think people want to be complicated, so they'll turn themselves. Like my mom, very, 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 very liberal, very, very anti-conservative, and lots of different aspects of the liberal platform matter to her. Right now, trans issues have become a much bigger deal to her because I'm trans, but like it was mostly abortion because I wouldn't exist without abortion. I learned recently. My mom had an abortion 6 weeks before she met my dad, and then she got pregnant with me like 3 months later. So if she had still been pregnant with this other baby, I would not exist. And the guy who was going to have that, the guy who impregnated her, he had told her beforehand. It was the kind of thing where he was like, I'm going to go in raw. You shouldn't. I'll take care of the baby. And then now that you're pregnant, you need to get an abortion or else I'm leaving. Needless to say, she got an abortion and left the guy. But like, my parents have now been together for 35 years. So like that abortion created a 35-year marriage and 3 children, me and my 2 younger brothers, So that's the most pro-abortion argument I could possibly make. And she was so, I guess, ashamed to even, I don't know. She never told me that story until like this year. So, that's how hard it is for women to even speak about, their real opinions on that. But like, she felt so strongly about that it matriculated out to all of her other liberal opinions, like it all just comes from that baseline of that first thought of, I really need to protect abortion,
One of the reasons I thought it might be fun to reach out to you and have a conversation. You and I are very different in a lot of ways. We have lived quite different lives, I think. I think you and I also have like.
I'll tell you what I think it is.
Insulting than I think
no, I'll tell you what I think it is. It's we are fascinated with language. We're two people who are fascinated with language, first and foremost.
Yeah, sure. I thought of that because I also would not have been born if it weren't for abortion. The story is
interesting.
The story is a little bit different. There's this genetic thing that like it only runs through women. So like my non-binary sibling inherited this, but I didn't. And the main thing it does is it makes miscarriages like way more likely. So my mom like getting pregnant, and it took several attempts. It took several attempts to have me and my sibling. You can like at a certain point you can tell that like this fetus is not going to be viable. There's nothing that can be done here. It's going to die one way or another. We can take care of it now, or we can let it get bigger and it'll just cause more problems. Like abortion was like really, really crucial healthcare, and if it hadn't been available, my mom has been a little bit wishy-washy about whether she even would have bothered trying to have kids if that healthcare hadn't been available. And unlike you, I knew that story from like a very young age. Like my mom has like raised us to be rather militantly pro-choice, and
I would say we have been very pro-choice. It's just she never told me why, or she would talk about other women, like other women's stories but I think she just was afraid to tell her own story until she knew that I would understand it, I didn't identify as female until my late 20s, and my mom never tried to talk to me about that kind of thing, the kind of thing that she would relate to other women, so I think that's a part of it as well, like knowing that I am in the feminine experience, made it easier. But as soon as I heard that story, I was like, well, everybody needs to hear that story. What are you talking about? I literally don't exist if there's not abortion. Come on. Like, that's the best argument I've ever heard for it.
It flips the normal narrative on its
Yeah,
head pretty damn efficiently, doesn't it?
it really does, and I'm surprised there's not. Well, I would not be surprised if those stories are being suppressed for the most part, but like that's the kind of story people need to hear, in my mind. And
I
it
know.
just happens to be my story. I'm so happy.
If you want to see more of this conversation, I will link to a fuller cut in the description.